Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. That's going to take us to Unit 5 for AP World, which is going to bring us to the years 1750 to 1900. In this time period, there are so many revolutions that we are just going to simply call this like the era of revolutions. They include like the United States Revolution, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and the Industrial Revolution. So there's lots that goes on in this time period. These arrows, of course, are all going to designate places where there are people migrating. Empires are going to continue. So, for example, the Qing dynasty is going to maintain control of China throughout this entire period, although it does get carved up into some small areas of influence by foreign powers. They lose a lot of territory in the north to the Russian Empire, which continues in this time period. The Ottoman Empire is going to continue, although they will lose some control over Egypt. And then, of course, there's the United States that will emerge as of 1783. The British Empire will expand to include 1/4 of the surface of all of Earth in this time period. The French will take a lot of empire in West Africa. A lot of stuff going on in this time period. So, first of all, key concept 5.1 takes us to this idea called the Enlightenment. So, as of 1648, we noted that the Peace of Westphalia system put an end to the traditional idea that Europeans had about creating a universal Christian theocracy. So instead, they had to start developing new ways of understanding governance and politics as opposed to, like, say, divine right monarchy. So, one of the things they did was develop new ways of understanding and empiricist approaches to both the natural world and human relationships. Empiricism is the notion that all knowledge is acquired from sense perception. Very important concept, for instance, in science. They also examined the role that religion played in public life, emphasizing a rejection of divine right monarchy, for instance, and in the case of others, suggesting a separation of church and state, and emphasized the importance of reason. Philosophers developed new political ideas about the individual, ideas like the individual should have their rights protected by the government, natural rights as opposed to the monarch's divine right to be able to do whatever they wanted. The idea would be that human beings have these individual natural rights that governments should protect. And of course, the social contract, the idea that people have to follow the laws of their society based upon this thing called the social contract. Important thinkers in this movement are John Locke. John Locke is perhaps the single first and most important of these philosophers. You can see this with this quote, all mankind being equal and independent, no one ought to harm another in his life, liberty, or estate property. So again, you should be able to see in there the huge influence this ends up having over Thomas Jefferson when he created the Declaration of Independence. Another important figure in the movement is the Baron Montesquieu, who argued that there should be a separation of powers, that the legislature and the executive and the judicial should be separated in a system with a separation of powers. Other guys had important ideas about freedom, like Diderot or Voltaire, who argued in favor of separation of church and state and right to freedom of speech, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. The rise and diffusion of Enlightenment thought that questioned established traditions in all areas of life often preceded revolutions and rebellions against existing governments. So there was a lot of this Enlightenment philosophy and development about new ideas about democracy. And the first country that's really going to start this entire wave, this cascade of Enlightenment-style democracy revolutions is going to be the United States, who starts to rebel against the British in 1775 and will successfully negotiate independence from the British in 1783. Next is the French Revolution, which breaks out in 1789. In the midst of that, the French actually, for a brief while, declare an end to slavery, thanks to ideals about equality. That's going to inspire the Haitian Revolution, which starts in 1791 and continues on until 1804, when Haiti gets independence from France. And then, of course, there's the various Latin American revolutions that start after Napoleon Bonaparte conquers Spain, making it impossible for the Spanish to keep control of their American colonies. Nationalism also became a major force shaping the historical development of states and empires. Nationalism, of course, will be this assertion that a group of people should have its own independent country, its own independent state. That's going to be part of that nation state system that was created with the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. Germany will actually finally come to unify under the leadership of a nation called Prussia. Before unification, Germany was comprised of 300 individual states. Nationalism arose following the Napoleonic Wars, giving the Germans an opposing sort of group of people to oppose themselves to, the French. The type of nationalism that will develop inside Germany will eventually decide that it also includes an idea about German ethnicity that does not include Jewish people, and that will culminate in one of the most horrible of world events, the Holocaust in World War II. Nationalism pushed for one unified German state. This dream was realized by Prussian Otto von Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm in 1871 when Germany finally unified as one country. Italy will likewise also unify as one country in 1871, except in this case it's going to be under the leadership of the island nation of Sardinia. Italian nationalism pushed for a third Rome to unify Italy. Based on the shared heritage of Rome and Western civilization, the Italians attempted unification many times before Cavour and Garibaldi succeeded and finally unified Italy as one country in 1871. Filipino nationalism also was pressed. For 333 years, the Philippines were ruled by the Spanish. Nationalism began around the end of the Spanish Empire, the late 1700s and early 1800s. This culminated in the 1896 Revolution. The Spanish-American War in 1898 eventually gave the Philippines to the U.S., but the U.S. notably did not help the Philippines gain their independence at that time. The Philippines would continue to be a U.S. colony from 1898 until 1947. In Argentina, they also saw nationalism, which had its roots in the independence wars against the Spanish. Led by Jose de San Martin in the late 19th century, it led to the Argentine expansion into Patagonia in the 1880s. Enlightenment ideas and religious ideals influenced various reform movements. These reform movements contributed to the expansion of rights, as seen in expanded suffrage, right to vote, the abolition of slavery, which started in the Atlantic world starting in the 19th century, and then, of course, the end of serfdom, which starts in Russia in the 1850s and culminates in 1861. Demands for equality also led to women to claim that they had the right to equality also, a movement that's known as feminism that suggests that women should be viewed as socially equal to men emerged. And challenged political and gender hierarchies. This can be seen with Mary Wollstonecraft, who published A Vindication of the Rights of Women in 1792. It argued that the education systems of the time were deliberately training women to be incapable. It called for reforms in education to give girls the same opportunity as boys. What makes her ideas unique is that it suggests the betterments of women's status could be enacted through political and educational changes. Olympe de Gouges in France also modeled her works on the French Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. It stated that women, like their male counterparts, have natural, inalienable, and sacred rights. These rights, as well as the related duties and responsibilities to society, are outlined in the 17 articles in the Declaration of the Rights of Women and Female Citizens. Amongst those rights included the right to participate in government, voice opinions, and property rights to women regardless of marital status. Next is the Seneca Falls Conference, which happens in 1848 and was organized by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott. The conference would be a major event in the women's movement.
We have an Acura in the east circle that's blocking the buses from bringing